Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the end of May. We're delighted that you could join us. Scott Lang with Visionary Philanthropic Consulting here. And I have the honor to introduce our host for today's session, Michael Shipham, our principal and lead consultant in the area of higher education. Michael's done a lot of work with us in the area of team building, performance metrics, and increasing the techniques and tactics that major gift office senior leadership officers use as well. So, what I want to do is get right into our session, let you learn from Michael, have him share a few words. I'm going to share my screen here to get his presentation up and running from the beginning. We titled this last quarter fiscal year action steps, thinking that we might have done this earlier in the year, but here we are in May, and I want to introduce you to Michael. His contact information, Michael at visionaryphilanthropy.com, will be displayed at the end of the session. He resides in Georgia and brings a sense of pragmatism and reality to every one of our sessions. So we're delighted to have you here, Michael. I'm going to turn my camera off and leave the screen to you.
Great. Let's go to the next slide, Scott. Good afternoon, all. Thanks for joining us. Well, congratulations are in order. You've made it to May. Spring's finally here. Baseball is back. And for those who are counting, it's only 106 days until the start of the new NFL season. That's the good news. Next slide, Scott.
Come on. There we go.
The bad news is that your fiscal year closes in about 6 weeks, and you need to inform your leadership at the next senior management or board meeting as to the reality of your organization's ability to hit this year's fundraising goal. Next slide. If you were smart, you would have conducted a mid-year assessment back in December and would already have the metrics and processes in place to answer that question. Let's say that for whatever reason, the December mid-year assessment did not occur, or you're new to advancement staff leadership role and did not know you should have done a mid-year assessment. What do you do? Well, we're going to walk you through a few steps to help you develop the outlines of a plan so you know what to do when this occurs. Next slide, Scott. First, assess where your fundraising currently stands as to goal versus actual for all your revenue streams, such as annual giving, special gifts, major, principal, plan gifts, etc. Identify where you're ahead and behind in revenue. And this is important for benchmarking purposes. Compare that to your last 3 to 5 years worth of giving data for actual year to date. So July 1st, 2025 to today by revenue stream, and then compare that to the actual fiscal year end numbers. Identify the revenue streams where the program has been historically ahead and behind at this time of the year and compare that to the actual Q4 results. You may find that your annual giving is lagging a little bit because perhaps the year-end appeals not gone out yet, or your spring giving days haven't completed yet. And this way you'll begin to get a balance as far as not only to get a sense as far as where the numbers are, but what vertical is producing revenue versus the vertical, meaning the revenue stream, is behind. Want to go to your next slide, Scott? Second, take a look at your budget. Review the current year budget. Identify how much budget you have left to make targeted investments. If you need to conduct additional appeals, if you need to fund additional major gift travel, leadership annual, principal giving travel, see how much you have left in budget to play with. If you need to get more email appeals out, do some marketing, you need to know what you have to spend in the pipeline. All right, next, forecast. This is forecast part A. Forecast the projected revenue in the pipeline that's going to close on or before June 30 for appeals that are still in process. Like I said, spring giving, faculty staff, fiscal year-end appeals, anything that is a standard appeal that you're going to run. Again, going back to the analysis you've done for the last 3 to 5 years, what did those appeals do? What were they budgeted for? What did they come in at? And don't go with hope. Go with reality here, because you need to come up with a number that is as firm as possible. And now we're going to get to the fun part, which is the forecast part B. You have to review all the open gift proposals for leadership, annual, major, principal, and plan giving that are in the database. And then you have to work with each gift officer for them to forecast the likelihood of those open proposals closing on or before the end of the fiscal year and the dollar value they believe the ask will close at. There's a worksheet sample, which we'll get to in a few slides, but this is best done in a percentage. So let's say you have a gift officer who has an open ask out for $100,000. What's the likelihood of that gift closing at $100,000? Is it 100%, 75, 50%, 25%, or nil? Many major gifts don't close at the ask amount the gift officer has in the CRM. The gift officer, assuming they have a good relationship with the prospect, knows best as far as whether or not that gift is going to come in at the ask amount in the CRM or is going to come in at a different value. Want to go to the next slide, Scott? So as I said, you need to confirm, is that $100,000 ask in the CRM, is that in reality a $50,000 ask? So 50% of that 100,000 ask. And does it have a likelihood of closing? So in this case, the example we're using is 50%. So that 100,000 ask has now been discounted to a forecasted ask of 25,000 by June 30. Now you have to do this for all open proposals. And again, stating the obvious a bit, but this is why you should have started this back in December to get a head start on things. And this is an important part, particularly for those of you who are managers of major gift officers. All major gift officers, all fundraisers in general, are optimists. You need to press them for the actual reality of the closing and the gift value. You know best how to do that. If possible, work through the managers. If you have the rank or authority to do so, work with them directly. But you really need to drill home the point in as polite a manner as possible that this is important, that we need to know where the year is going to close at, because you have to report this data to the board and you don't want to report an inflated number to the board. Next slide. This is just a sample worksheet. When I was at University of Rochester, this was an exercise we went through twice a year in December and again in late April. So each gift officer, anybody with a portfolio with proposals in the system, would get an Excel file, and the first 3 columns, the prospect name and ID, the actual ask date, and then the ask amount, that's all pulled directly from the CRM. You're asking the gift officer to complete the rest of this. So what's the percentage chance the gift officer gives this gift closing by June 30? What do they think the new forecasted ask amount is? If you're going to discount asks, now's the time to do it. And then what's the likelihood of that gift closing by June 30? And then the Excel file is set up so you put in the numbers and it automatically computes it calculates what the dollar value of that ask is to close on or before June 30, and then put in what the gift officer thinks is going to be the approximate closing date for that ask. and you do this for every single ask. So you get these files run, you then email them out to the gift officers. Turnaround on these things is tight. Don't give them 2 or 3 weeks to get it done. Give them 2 or 3 days. This has to remain a, a top priority, front focus to get it done. If they have to wait 2 or 3 weeks, they won't do it until the last day or two anyway. So just shorten that window and give it a very short turnaround time.
Uh, Michael, a question for you. I would imagine sometimes, you know, conditions might change in the family, right? Somebody might be
Oh yeah,
dealing with an illness. You know, the husband or wife might be in the hospital or dealing with chemo treatments or whatever. And so they could be enthusiastic supporters of the organization, but not likely to make the gift within, call it 3 months, 6 months. They've got to wait until whatever it is they're dealing with settles down. And
correct.
then it's a realistic time to go talk to them. I mean, I fielded a call this morning from one of our colleagues who said that he was asked whether or not it would be appropriate for an organization to follow up with a particular individual. And he said, well, not now, because the grandfather, the head of the family, the patriarch of the family, is in hospice. Well, don't you think this would be a good time to talk about a legacy gift? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
he's he's in hospice. The family's dealing with his ultimate demise and passing from this earth. So, things like that can happen. And even though you might have a deadline, it's not necessarily going to line up with the family. What kind of experience do you have
Well,
with those kinds of situations?
how you started this out is so true. Life happens. That wonderful ask you did back in September, where the donors enthusiastic. They came in for a tour. They loved the mission. They loved the idea of what you suggested for a scholarship or for a name gift, and they're raring to go. And now you're in May, and you're past what they initially promised as a gift commitment date. This is where good gift management skills, good gift officer skills, and particularly good portfolio management skills come into place. If you're a major gift officer and you've tiered out your prospect portfolio to a 3-year view where you have your 10 or 12 you're going to solicit and try to close for this year, and then you've got say 25 to 30 who are going to become your top 10 or 12 next year, plus a good pool of discovery level. That's your 3-year view. For those folks you're going to see this, who you are going to close this year, you're looking at minimally 4 face-to-face interactions. Now, visits have been all redefined since the pandemic. What used to be face-to-face, now a lot of that time that's Zoom or a team meet. It's catching up with folks at events. But just because you made the ask in September, you should still be following up with that person, touching base. Are there any more questions? Can we help you with anything? And over those ensuing 7 or 8 months, you should have a good idea as to whether or not that gift's still going to close for that amount by June 30. If you just made the ask and then vanished without staying in contact with the prospect, then anything can happen. If you were staying on top of it, then they could let you know if someone in the family is ill, if the economy is giving them a very hard time in business, if their savings are an issue. And then at that point, you can renegotiate the ask. You can change the anticipated close date. But these are all touches you need to make post that ask to make sure that that train's still on the tracks.
And then you routinize this, so at least twice a year you're doing this forecast analysis.
Correct. Because management's going to want to know, and by management, I mean senior level leadership, they're going to want to know what the number is for December 31st, about 2 or 3 weeks beforehand.
Mhm.
And they're really going to want to know what the number is for June 30 at least a month or two in advance. So again, the more you do this, the more you systematize it, the more you get the gift officers ingrained in what's doing, in what's being done, the more comfortable this becomes for everybody involved.
Got it. All right. Thank
All right,
you. I'll
go to the
move to
next.
the next slide. Oh, this is so to your point, the campaign management system we're developing, Gifted Memory, has a lot of this built into it. So for each gift officer, you can identify what you anticipate the metrics are going to be relative to the number of um, visits, proposals, closure rates, etc., and then track that against uh, both the projected amount and then what's actually come in, and do this over the course of the year. So this starts July 1 and ends um, June 30. And the anticipation here is that on average for this individual's prospect pool, the average pledge amount is going to be 15 grand, and the annual cash flow would be 90,000. Um, someone with a major gift officer portfolio, that's going to be in the six figures rather than the five-figure range. But we also anticipate that he'd have a 75% close rate, and if he submitted 36 proposals during the course of the year, 24 of them would come in. But to your point, Michael, each month you sit down and you look at this, or each quarter, and you can make adjustments predicated on what's going on. This is coming out of the system as people are entering their data. So, shameless plug for Gifted Memory. If any of you are interested in a demo downstream, we're getting ready to release it over the course of the summer. So, hang on to your hats.
One other point there, Scott, is depending upon what sort of CRM you have and the type of coding that you do when proposals are put in, you should be able to run stage reports. You should be able to run a stage report for all open proposals in the system, let's just say for $100,000 and above. And that's something, particularly if you're in a campaign, that management should be looking at minimally quarterly. So how's the pipeline doing for open asks of $100,000 plus? Is there movement? Are gifts being closed? Are gifts stalling? Are asks stalling? These are, if you're doing stage management reports, if you're doing forecasting, there shouldn't be too much surprise. The only surprise that occurs is if the gift officer is not staying in touch with the prospect post the ask, and those conversations aren't being updated in the CRM. Now, another thing here is while you've got the gift officer's attention, is now's a great time to start closing out open proposals. I like to refer to them as zombie proposals that have been in the system for minimally 18 months or more, where there's minimally zero to minimal activity. I used to have a gift officer who worked for me at U of R. Great guy, one of the best people I ever knew. But he had the highest ask percentage rate of any gift officer on the entire team. He also had the lowest gift closing rate of any gift officer on the team. And it wasn't until I spent some time with him in the field and observed him do an ask, series of asks, that it came to me that his ask style was so soft. So he was convinced he had done an ask. The prospect didn't hear an ask. The prospect heard a suggestion, an open-ended one that referenced an approximate gift amount, an approximate gift date, but nothing firm. So he was going back and putting all these soft asks in his asks. Once we identified the issue and got things tightened up, his gift closing rate went up through the roof. But you have to be sure, particularly if you're a gift officer, are the asks you're putting in the system, are they indeed hard asks?
Yeah.
This is also a good time for gift officers as they're spending a lot of time in the CRM to recalibrate the gift ask amounts and the anticipated close dates in their proposals. Sometimes they're overly enthusiastic, overly optimistic. That ask you made back in September has stalled. You've not been able to get the prospect on the phone. They didn't show up for the 2 events that you invited them to. So I would say that ask is at risk. So is that ask really still going to close at the face value and the ask state that the gift officer put it in? Again, this all comes down to ongoing communication and collaboration between the gift officer and the prospect.
Well, and then this was an example of coming up with some realistic projections that we've used with clients, identifying the number of proposals that have been submitted, summing their aggregate value, and then what the probability level is that they're going to close. And so we think out of these 12, we'll get 9. So then that would be $2,250,000. So once Michael sits down with each one of the individual gift officers and looks at each individual proposal, and you aggregate this up, then the thesis would be that you'd have a solid number for your June 30 closure. We'll get X number of commitments in by hopefully the 29th, right? I mean, when I worked at the law school, Case Western Reserve, there were only 2 days in the calendar that made any sense to anybody. One was December 30 because it was the end of the year and they wanted their tax donations in. And the other was June 30, which was our arbitrary and official fiscal year end. And a lot of the attorneys that I work with said, "Oh, Scott, yeah, I'll mail that into you." And I said, "No, actually, I'm going to be downtown. I'll come to the firm and I'll pick it up." I mean, I'd literally, turned myself into a delivery boy for courier services and picked up checks to make sure we got them recorded by December 30th and June 30.
What most gift officers know, and you generally kind of forget this by the time you get to senior leadership, is that the fiscal year ask is the weakest ask of any ask during the year. The calendar year ask is the most important because for the donors, particularly those that itemize, it's a huge incentive for them for taxes to come the next quarter. But because your fiscal year is closing, that creates zero motivation for a donor. So yeah, it's important for you as the gift officer, but it's you got to remember that fiscal year ask, just because your fiscal year is ending, it's very low motivation for the donor to write you a check on June 30 versus July 10th.
Yeah, really true.
All right, so you've done all your number crunching, you've had all your chats, you've annoyed all your gift officer staff, but you're going to take them out Friday night for free cocktails. So you total up your forecast for what you expect the fourth quarter revenue is going to be. If the forecast shows you're going to achieve goal, mazel tov, then all's great and you can sleep better at night. However, if the forecast is short, then you have to identify which revenue streams will be short and focus on those areas till the close of the year. And going back again to the forecast part A, where you're looking at year-to-date comparison to calendar to fiscal year close, you're always going to have a couple of revenue streams that run behind at year-to-date, but either come in at goal or come in over goal. And if you've got 3 to 5 years worth of data that says your annual, let's say your annual appeal is maybe 10% behind where it should be, But based upon the last 5 years worth of data, you know it's going to close 15% over goal. You can bake that 15% growth in, assuming you follow the same plan for this year as you did past years. So that's that give and take by revenue stream. When you're presenting this to your leadership, you don't want to be the person with the head in the hands, saying, oh, the numbers don't look good. The numbers are what the numbers are. There's a lot of reasons for growth and for decline in programs across the board. What you have to do is be unemotional. You have to be fact-based. This isn't a ding upon you. It's the reality. But it's important to remember that forewarning to your leadership allows them ownership in trying to drive additional revenue before June 30. If you come to them today and say, annual giving is going to do fine, we're pretty cool in plan giving, major gifts we're off by 15%, that allows your leadership to get on the phone and start making some calls, or if they're going to go on a visit, to add in a few more names of folks with open asks and try to elevate that to get the close by June 30. The more they're involved in the process, the more ownership you give them, the more goal sharing there is. So if you come to them on June 29th and say, we're going to miss goal by 12%, they're going to be pretty upset because they know 6 weeks ago, if you had come to them with the same thing, they may have had one or two donors that they were saving for first quarter of the next year that they could have advanced to bail out this year. So always be sure to engage them in this process.
I've got a question along those lines. Have you ever been in a situation where it looks like there's a gap between the budgeted revenue and what you've actually raised so far? And there might be a member of the board, or there might be a particular loyal donor that you could legitimately go to and say, hey, listen, we're like 10 grand short, 15 grand short. If I know this is a stretch and a return trip to the well, but if you'd be willing to help us, we sure could use it right now. Is that done with any amount of success in your experience?
Second asks are totally appropriate. It's a fair game to ask. You just have to make sure you're not doing a second ask to the same group of folks every single year, or else you're just going to burn them out and that well's going to go dry.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, and particularly for volunteer leadership who are supposedly more engaged to begin with and more aligned with the mission of what you're trying to accomplish, if you go to your advancement committee and say, hey, look, we're so close to goal. We know we kind of caked it up this year with a 10% growth rate for the goal. We're 2% away from that. What that means specifically is that if each of you could help leverage an additional $5,000 or $10,000 each, we hit goal, which we know is a huge growth rate, is a huge increase from last year. And then get the chair of the advancement committee to sit down with advancement committee members one-on-one and say, Harry, I know you gave, you've been great, you've been supporting, but do you think you might be able to do a little bit more so the program gets across the finish line by June 30?
Got it. Good.
All right, and this is just to kind of wrap things up again, but forecasting, like all skills, is a learned one. The more experience you and your team have with it, the better all parties will be at executing the process in the future. I first came into the whole concept of revenue forecasting when I was a regional director with JDRF, the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And the research committee would always meet in the middle of May. Our fiscal year didn't close till June 30, but the research committee needed to know how much money we were going to have available by June 30 because they were evaluating and letting grants for the research for next year. So we had to really refine this process And our goal was always 5% plus or minus. So the more you do this, if you do the forecast in December to get your estimate for calendar year end close and do it again late April or early May, it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. The more your staff does it, the more ingrained in the culture it becomes. So everybody knows first week in December, they got to carve out 2 or 3 days for forecasting, and the same for late spring.
Mhm.
And in highly functional teams where this is part of the culture, it's very common for these forecasts to come in at 5 to 10% of actual.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that was our experience at MedStar Health as well. Um, the, the delta, I think we were within 2% of what we had forecasted for the end of the year. So
You
if
you you really want to hit 5. 10's almost like too much wiggle room.
yeah,
So your goal is really to hit 5.
so if again you started the conversation by saying we really should have done this several months ago, but if you've got about 4 weeks and you need some time in June to actually close it, this little graph sort of I think
Good flow
replicates
chart.
what you talked about. First, you want to review the gifts and revenue that have come in so far, right, through each channel. Then you want to take a look at your budget, if I summarize this correctly. What do you have left that has not been spent that you might be able to allocate to an extra direct mail piece, an e-blast, a LinkedIn campaign, whatever it's going to be.
Travel.
And then you're
Yeah.
going to forecast your gift closures and then maybe contact people where proposals are outstanding, and see
Yeah.
if they'd be willing to could make their gift by year end. And then your quote, clear out the zombie proposals, get anything that's not real or not realistic and just clear it out of the system entirely. Is that basically what we ought to be doing in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
In reality, you should have started this process around April 15th.
Yeah.
Small shops can probably get away with this, but if you're in higher ed and, let's say you've got a staff team of 20, um, just to coordinate all the resources and balance it with travel that's going on now, plus spring events. I mean, the good news is that in May, for the most part, you're post commencement, but
Mhm.
there's still a lot of stuff that needs to get done. So the more time you have on the front end, the better off you're going to be able to refine the focus and refine the actual number.
Well,
And once you find that gap and you find the revenue stream where that gap is, do some analysis. Is that major gift gap? Is it a program? Is it a unit? Is it a gift officer? Is it a sin that's shared across the board? Because these are things you're going to want to tighten up in procedure for next fiscal year.
well, and then for those of us who live in resort communities, and that's kind of what I think of as Naples. I mean, our residents population really clears out after Easter, and then they go up north for the summertime. They're certainly out of here in June and July and August. But if you're in a lake community like Lake Geneva in Wisconsin, you know, basically your work starts in the spring
Right.
and ends before the fall, right?
Like up in the vineyard. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
With everybody coming up for the summer.
yeah. Okay.
Agreed.
So want to make sure we've got time for some questions and answers. If anybody has anything they'd like to express to Michael, put it in the chat or Q&A right here. If there's an issue that you're dealing with currently, like, oh my gosh, I'm just looking and our our marathon didn't come in where we thought it would, or the giving day wasn't quite at the level you thought it would be. What could we do right now to turn the ship of state? We'd be happy to reply.
One thing I used to do when I was at Georgia Southern is they had a very good IT training room. And every quarter, I would bring the major gift staff and the annual giving staff, anybody who had a portfolio, with the exception of the vice president, I would bring them into the room and we would spend about an hour with the head of advancement CRM, walking through the database, walking through any new updates to the database. We were in the process then of converting over from Banner to NXT, so there was a
Mm.
lot of talk about that, some training, but also provide the gift officers about 90 minutes to go in and review all their open proposals. And that was the time to make adjustments. That was the time to make adjustments to ask amounts, to anticipated closing dates, or to take a proposal out. When I was at U of R, you almost needed permission of God to delete a proposal. Management was so tough on that. But, and it really, because it was so hard, it encouraged more bad proposals to remain in and inflated the pipeline a ridiculous amount until we finally got senior management to say, okay, no more penalties for taking a bad proposal out because things happen. But the more you bring the staff in and the more you show the staff, particularly how stage reports are being used to manage pipeline development, that's important for them because they're going to be evaluated upon that. And you may have staff who perhaps came from another organization or institution that didn't even have a stage report management process. So it's important for them to know the tools that are going to be holding them, that are going to be, in the end, be holding them accountable and helping them be able to achieve success by ensuring that the data that's in the CRM is as accurate as possible.
So we've got a question about you know, how to prioritize the creation of reports in a new CRM. I mean, what the quote directly, we're building new reports in our CRM. What should we prioritize to help with forecasting for end of year? So are there ways you would set up um, the structure of these stage reports or pipeline reports? What are the things you would do in the system that might make this easier to access?
It's been my experience that when you go through a conversion, regardless of who the vendor is, you're going to get an encyclopedia of canned reports. And you need to go through those canned reports, compare them to the reports you're currently using, and do the criteria for the new canned reports. And by that, by canned, I mean push a button. You put the criteria in, you push a button, boom, report runs. When I was at Southern and we had Banner, and for those of you who have lived with Banner know Banner has its limitations in the advancement modules. I used a management report for to track gift officer activity, but it had to be the summary of three separate reports and then a fourth report run to put the whole thing together. And it was just a total time suck to get that done every 2 weeks. When we went into Razor's Edge, I took that report that I did and the feeder reports I had to use from Banner to the implementation team from Blackbaud, because I didn't see anything like it on the canned reports that we had. And the Blackbaud folks said, "Oh, sure, easy piece of cake," because you usually get they'll give you 20 or 30 customized reports that they kind of throw in as part of the process. So look at your critical advancement management reports that you're doing now. Review the reports you're going to be getting from the new CRM. If most of them meet the mark, that's great. If you've got some critical reports that are not going to be met, now's the time to sit down with the conversion team and say, these are three reports that we use that are critical for us to keep the program on track month after month after month. I don't see this in the menu of reports you're giving us. Is this something you can build as a custom? If so, what's the cost? Can you throw it in? Now's the time to be having those. Assuming your new CRM can track by stage and your gift officers can put stage in as far as asks go, readiness to close is a stage, and you can track that readiness to close by the dollar value of the ask. That's an important one. You want to be able to generate, as I said, that $100,000 open ask report. Now, $100,000 may be much higher than what you need. Perhaps your levels are different and you need that report at 10,000 or 25,000. Or you're working at a very large place and you've got a tremendous amount of principal gifts coming in, you need to be able to track that at 500,000. Whatever those parameters are, define them and then sit down with the conversion team from the vendor, show them the reports that you're using, show how you're building those reports, and then see how they can incorporate that in the product that they're going to deliver now. Once that product is up and running and done, running in parallel and the old systems turned off, any new reports you want, they're going to charge you for writing them. So now's the time to have those conversations. But I would say that $100,000 stage report is a critical one.
And I remember talking to a client who said, Scott, I get a lot of people who tell me they'll make a gift, right? I ask them to support us. They say yes. And then I spend the rest of my life, it seems, chasing down the paper, right? Actually getting the signed gift agreement. And so we actually, in her case, made a stage. If you think about being, qualified as a prospect, and then in the cultivation or engagement process, ready to be solicited,
ready to solicit,
pending,
ready to ask.
Yeah. She actually added a category called verbal. So they'd said yes, it was verbal. We don't have the signed document, and then it went to actual commitment.
Well, and this is where trial asks come in, and a lot of this is, and again, this comes back to like the leadership of major gifts, of principal gifts. There are philosophies on waiting too long to ask, asking too quickly. If you have an ask closing rate ratio of 80% or higher, you're waiting way too long in that process to ask.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is begin to incorporate the concept of a trial ask. And we did this a lot at U of R. Great example came from my old boss, Matt Haig. He was working with a prospect who had received a scholarship, and that scholarship allowed them to graduate from U of R, went on to a very successful career, high capacity. And Matt was totally convinced that this person was going to fully fund a $1 million scholarship. So Matt got everything in order, did a proposal, knew who he, knew the area, the major, going to name it for a professor who the prospect had, rolled it out to the prospect, and the prospect just took him out at the knees. Said, thank you very much for this, but even though I received a scholarship, it didn't cover my full costs. I still had a job, and I really believe that everybody going through college should have skin in the game, and there should be no such thing as full scholarships, yada, yada, yada. Scholarship idea was bad. So Matt retreated, regrouped, came back out, and thought that based upon his love of a program and a professor, that perhaps and the potential, he might be willing to consider doing an endowed professorship. And Matt pitched it to him, and the guy loved it. It was great, but it was done as a trial ask. A trial ask is great because it confirms donor intent. It confirms area or designation. and it confirms the gift amount range. Again, you're talking parameters, kind of getting to your idea of a verbal, Scott, but a trial ask really helps to tighten up the process. And if you're in a large enough shop where you can actually put a trial ask in as a stage report, you should.
And that's a good point because it's conversational, and you want to, when you actually submit a proposal, it should be the natural consequence of a series of conversations that have happened in the past. So I like that a lot. Um, I think we're getting to the end of our time together. I want to thank you and thank those that have joined us this afternoon. It's for some a busy time of year. For others, it's a time to get ready for vacation. Some of us are concerned about what the end of June might look like. So this was a timely conversation. Appreciate your dedication to it, and just want people to know that if you want to reach out to Michael,
Yeah,
you can
please.
contact him directly. Michael, just the way it's pronounced, at visionaryphilanthropy.com. Um, and with that, I think we can say thank you and appreciate your time, Michael.
Always a pleasure, Scott. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me.
Bye bye now.